Sarah.
It's Jen.
It's Marvin.
And we're here with another episode of Girlfriends Talk Marketing, albeit a little bit virtual. So thanks for joining us on Zoom today. And Jen, let's tell us about who our guest is today.
Today our guest is Marvin Kane of Kane Works up in Salem, Massachusetts. He is a former rock star, former comedian, and now he's doing a killer job with websites and with SEO. We're really glad to have you here today, Marvin. Can you tell us a little bit about what SEO is and what you're doing with it?
Sure. SEO, of course, stands for search engine optimization. And it's the practice of applying methodologies to your website with the goal of getting found on a Google search for keywords that are relevant to your business. And not just getting found, but getting found, placing as high on the search results page as possible. So people see you before they see your competition. Essentially, that's what it is. That's what SEO is. But for me, it's getting high placement is the beginning. The goal is for my clients is to make more money, sell more of what they make, more services, and if their visibility doesn't translate into an increased bottom line, then what's the point? So that's how I look at it anyway.
Very practical.
Yeah.
So, and you work with local rather than national. Can you explain the difference?
Yeah, that's right. Well, local search is a kind of a subset of search engine optimization. And it's for companies whose customer base, client base is in their local area. So the focus is getting them found by people in those areas, in those cities, in those towns who are searching for companies that do what they do. And it's different than national. National is you've got to appeal to people all over the country, and it's sort of a different mindset, and local is, for example, if I'm working with a plumber who's in Lynn, he's not going to benefit from getting a call from somebody in Nebraska. It's just a waste of time.
Right.
So you focus on, the local area.
That makes sense.
Excellent. So when you're, I kind of have a two-part question. So as a whole, Google's constantly changing its algorithms. Black hat and white hat practices from 10 years ago. You can't keyword stuff, buying links and all of that. Google tries to ensure that there's a level playing field for everybody. So first is, how do you stay up to date with all the trends? Like, how do we know what's just not like a shiny object in passing? And how do we know what we should really be creating content around for evergreen purposes or, constant organic growth that way? So I'll let you answer that first, and then I'll ask my second part.
Sure. Well, that is the challenge, of course, because the algorithms change constantly, and keeping up with it is quite a challenge. The way I do that is, over the years, I've identified some thought leaders in the SEO industry, and I subscribe to their blogs, to their newsletters. I often, call some of these folks on the phone, and we have what we're doing now. We have video conference calls, because these folks are sort of high up on the SEO food chain. They know people within Google, and so they're the first to get all this information, and they give it out. So that's how I stay in touch. I just make sure that I'm following the right people. And that's important because there are a lot of wrong people to follow.
Right.
So
right.
I try to be clear about, and it's taken a while to identify who those folks are, but that's who I follow, and that's how I stay on top of it.
Good, and that is super helpful. So thank you for sharing that. And then the biggest challenge that you hear from your clients in terms of SEO, how much should I budget for? It's very top of the funnel. If no one can find you, you can't do your middle of the funnel lead generation and your email nurturing and your, demos and your sales closing calls if you don't have what I like to call like live at bats for prospects and for your sales team. So, you know, what are you hearing on a regular basis? And then how are they kind of, you know, handling the tracking of everything and all that stuff?
Well, I mean, the first thing that I always tell potential clients is kind of what you just said, which is that it doesn't matter how fabulous your website is. If no one finds it, then you just wasted your money, or you're not, you know, you're not spending enough money. And, you know, SEO is one of those things that people typically don't understand. It's like, you know, getting taken advantage of when you bring your car into the shop. You don't know what they're doing. So one of the things that I try to do that sets me apart is take a very educational approach. I always tell clients what I'm doing, why I'm doing it, and what's the expected result from it. And I report to them every month, and in between those reports, I'm on the phone quite often with them just to let them know that hey, I've done this today, and let's see how that works. And of course, there's tracking, you know, Google Analytics tracking code, you know, Google Search Console. There's lots of tools to track whether your efforts are being successful. And you have to know what those tools are, and you know, how to use them, and how to, you know, this data by itself is meaningless unless you know how to turn data into a meaningful action plan. And so those are the things that I concentrate on. And typically where I start is with a site audit. I just go through the site and say, well, here's where you need to improve. And then I sort of leave it up to them to tell me whether they want to do it themselves, which they don't because they don't know how, or hire me to guide them through it. So that's sort of how I approach that.
So along those lines, you mentioned the mechanic in the car. When somebody is thinking about SEO and hiring somebody for SEO, what kind of questions should they be asking and what should they be looking for? Because I hear a lot of people talking about package deals, like I'll do your website, your social, your blogs, and your SEO. So what should the considerations be? Should SEO be broken out? And what questions should you ask?
I mean, if a client is specifically looking for SEO, then, you know, I guess it would depend on what the package deal is. But what I find when I talk to clients is they've already had experience with SEO companies and they're just confused because so many SEO companies just churn out these sort of boxed reports that is all this busy work that they've done. And a client looks at that and goes, well, I guess they've done a lot of work, but then when you ask them, well, has it moved the needle? Have you sold more widgets? Well, no, not really. So I think that, you know, when you interview an SEO company, you really want to ask them very specific questions like, what are you doing? And what can I expect from the efforts that you're doing? How will you communicate to me what you're doing? And you know, what are sort of the milestones for me to look at to really know whether, you know, this is making sense for my business. You know, I mean, I don't want to keep paying you if I keep getting these reports, but I don't understand them. I don't know what's in them. And it looks like you're working, but I don't see anything in my business changing. So I think that's the approach, is to approach it with, if I pay you X amount of dollars a month, I'm going to want to see something happen in my business. And that's a very fair approach to take. Otherwise, you know, why pay somebody to do it?
And SEO really is an investment, hopefully.
It is. You know, with my SEO clients, I try to set up reasonable expectations. And one of the first things I say is, do not expect quick results. There are billions of web pages out there and they all want to be number one. Okay, so it takes a protracted effort over a period of time, and unless you're prepared to give me 6 months, it's not going to work. I need 6 months minimum. And at the end of that time, let's see where we are. And if you want to continue, great. But you really won't see much if you're not patient. So
that makes sense.
That's important.
So in terms of tips to get started, so I think, a lot of companies this time of year, everyone's planning, they're doing a diagnostic on how the year went. Did they make the sales numbers that they needed to? Did they have the quality of leads that they need to? Marketing messages, products, services, everyone's kind of going through like an initial analysis time period. So, and that also includes companies that have never used localized search before or done a concerted effort on SEO. So how does someone get started? Like, what are some tips to really get started in terms of being prepared, making sure that when someone comes to you, that they're ready to make an investment in SEO? Like, can you talk to us about what some of those things are that need to be in place in order for a campaign to even be successful?
Right. Well, that's the educational approach right there, because people don't know what SEO is or what the elements or components are. And so that's why, and for me, when I have an initial meeting, I go through all of those things. I talk about your citation profile. I talk about your online reviews. I talk about your on-page stuff like meta tags, meta titles, and meta descriptions. And I talk about inbound links, internal links, things like that. People don't know all of that. And those are some of the very basics that you need to do to get started. If your title tags don't have any keywords, if they have nothing to do with what the information is on your page, you're not going to rank. It's as simple as that. So,
right.
So that's why it really starts with an audit, so that people understand what they're lacking and what they need to improve upon. Otherwise, there's no way, if you don't know what the elements of SEO are, you don't even know what questions to ask. And everyone I talk
right.
to initially will always say things like, I don't know, that's why I'm hiring you.
Right.
So I have, different types of documentation where I have a document, for example, that lists all the SEO topics that are important. And I give that to them and say, here are the things that we need to look at and understand what all this means. And so it's the educational approach, which really worked for me, because not a lot of companies do that. They just churn out the numbers, or they'll do a monthly analytics overview report and send it to their client, and then think, okay, I did my job for the month. And then the client has this thing and goes, what does this mean? I mean,
right. And the data is so overwhelming. Yeah, the data is so overwhelming. They don't know how to read it. It's not necessarily in comparison to something else. Like,
right.
There's no storyline for the client to understand.
Well, I like to, if I'm working with a new client, I like to, when I install analytics, I say, let's give this 30 days and then look at the numbers, because anything less than that, there's just not enough data. And then after
right.
a while, I'll do comparisons, like the last 30 days versus the prior 30 days. Then you can see trend lines. And then you can
right.
see, well, on such and such date, your users spiked. So what did you do? Did you do something? Did
right.
you place an ad or a Facebook post or something like that? I mean, interpreting all this data is very, very important.
Right.
Otherwise, there's no way to know if what you're doing is working. One of the tools that I use is called Crazy Egg. I don't know if you've ever heard of that. But what
yes, I love Crazy Egg. Yeah.
So you know what that does? It actually tracks. You can do videos of a user session, and then when you play the video, you actually see their mouse movements. You see how they are moving through your website, and if they're not clicking where you want them to, or they're not staying somewhere long enough, well, then you got all this information now and say, well, let's figure out why that's happening. And so you make changes right. and then do another 30-day video, and hopefully you'll see, well, now they are spending time on this page. Now they are clicking here. So, there's just, right. a lot of it is knowing what tools are available.
Yeah.
That's hugely important.
Very cool.
So Marvin, what are you working on now, and how can people get a hold of you if they would like to follow up and find out more about SEO?
what am I working on now? Well, can you see the board? I don't know if you can see the board. Good, yeah, there's a whole bunch of clients on the whiteboard there. And right now I'm working for several clients, I'm working on SEO, but I'm in different phases of the project. So for one client right now, I'm working on cleaning up their citation profile. You know, that is really important because there's so many different online directories and citation sites. And if your information, you you know, name, address, phone number, web address, if it's not consistent and if it's not the same on all of those citations, then Google is going to go, I'm not sure what you are. I'm not sure what results to. So, and that's a fairly big effort because you have, you know, I do it manually. You have to go to all these sites.
Okay.
And see what information is displaying. And if it's wrong, you have to claim the listing. And then, so then you can log in and correct all the information. So I'm working on that with one client. With another client, I'm working on helping them get reviews. And reviews, particularly Google reviews, because Google owns the search universe. So particularly with Google reviews, it's not just getting reviews, it's getting effective reviews. So for example, a review that says, these guys are great, you know, I recommend them to anybody. Well, that's nice, but it doesn't, you know, if you can get a review that says something like, I was having trouble installing my boiler, and when I hired Acme Boiler, they installed it quickly, cleaned up after themselves, and they're the best boiler installer in the North Shore. Well, now you've got a review that's got keywords in it. And that makes it a whole lot more powerful. It's not this generic, oh, these guys are great, you know, I recommend them. So I'm working with a client on doing that. And you know, that's challenging. A lot of people are afraid to ask for reviews. And so my response to that, if you're afraid to ask for a review, then you've got a different problem. Your problem is maybe you're not so confident yourself that you did a great job. So maybe you want to look at that. You know, something that I did for my own reviews is I sent an email, not a boilerplate. I customized each one and sent it to all my clients, asking them for a review. And my reviews went from like 2 to 38 in like two weeks. So, you know, that's really important. Yeah. So that's another thing I'm working on. And then there's, you know, content. Content. If only I knew a writer. No, content is king. It always has been. And it still is. So, you know, thin content is just not going to cut it now. You have to have. It's not that you have to have a certain amount of words, but you have to show Google that you're an expert, you're an authoritative, you're trustworthy in your field, and the content pretty much is what does that. You know, one of the things that doesn't work anymore if you're servicing several cities and towns, and you create city pages, individual pages for each one of those towns. What people used to do is just create a template for the city page and then just swap out the name of the city and do that 10 times, 15 times, and 20 times. And Google has figured out, no. See, that's thin content. There's no value added there. So if you're going to do city pages, you need to make each one unique. And it's not easy, but you know, that's where the work is. It takes work.
Right. So if people want to reach you, what's the best way?
The best way is kaneworks.com, it's my website. And should I give my phone number? Right here on screen, 978 978-836-7182. And my email is mjkane@kaneworks.com. And of course I have, you know, like social channels. I have a Facebook and, you know, Twitter and LinkedIn, which I find pretty effective. A YouTube channel, got all that good stuff. In Salem, I'm at 265 Essex Street in Salem, downtown Salem, which is really fun in October.
Yep.
Yeah, it's crazy in October. And so that's how they can reach me.
Okay, fantastic. And we will have that information on screen as well, so it's easy for people to find. Thank you so much for taking the time. This has been incredibly helpful. You got
Oh,
my
no, I
wheel
appreciate it. Thanks for inviting me.
on some ideas that we can put into place.
Great.
Yes, thanks so much, Marvin. It was so great. And thanks to everybody for tuning in. So we'll see you next time.
All right. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Bye all.
Thanks, Marvin. Bye.
Bye-bye.